7. That was the number of times Daniel failed before anyone believed he could win. 7 businesses, 7 dreams, 7 moments where he put everything on the line and watched it collapse. The last time, the 7th time, he sat in his empty flat, 34 years old, with 43 pounds in his bank account, and a notebook full of ideas nobody wanted. Most people would have stopped at 3. Daniel stopped at 7. But here's what nobody tells you about the 7th failure. It isn't the end. For some people, the rare ones, the 7th failure is the last thing that needed to happen before they finally understood something. Something so simple it sounds like a cliché until you're sitting in the dark at 4:58 in the morning and it finally makes sense. This is the story of what Daniel discovered and why the number 7 matters more than you think. Daniel grew up believing that effort was enough. His father had worked in construction for 30 years, up at 5, home at 7, hands permanently rough. And while they never had much, his father carried himself with a dignity that Daniel spent his whole adult life trying to replicate. The message he absorbed as a child was simple: if you work hard enough, it works out. So Daniel worked hard. The first failure came at 26, a small e-commerce business selling handmade leather goods. He'd spent 8 months building it, invested £4,000, sold 67 items. Then a bigger competitor moved into the space, undercut his prices by 40%, and within 3 months, his orders dried up entirely. He closed it quietly and told almost no one. The second failure came 18 months later, a fitness app he'd co-founded with a university friend. They spent 6 months building it, launched it, got 400 downloads in the first week. Then the friend took a job in Singapore, the partnership collapsed, and the app died on the App Store with a 2-star average review and a code base neither of them could maintain alone. The third failure was a podcast. He made 11 episodes. The 12th was never recorded. The fourth was a consultancy. 3 clients, then 0. The 5th was a drop-shipping store that made money for exactly 1 quarter before the supplier disappeared. The 6th, and the one that hurt the most, was a business he genuinely believed in, a subscription service for independent bookshops. He'd spent a year on it, got meetings with investors, got close, genuinely close to a funding round that would have changed everything. Then the lead investor pulled out 2 days before the term sheet was signed, citing market conditions, and the whole structure collapsed like a building with no foundation. Daniel sat in his car outside the coffee shop where he'd taken the call and didn't move for 40 minutes. He was 33 years old. He had failed 6 times. And somewhere in that car, in the silence, he made a decision that most people in his position don't make. He decided to try one more time. Not because he had a new idea, not because the odds had changed, but because stopping felt worse than failing again. The 7th attempt was the most modest thing he'd ever done. No investors, no co-founders, no grand plan. Just a simple online educational course about something he genuinely understood: small business financial management, built in the spare bedroom of his rented flat using a second-hand laptop and a ring light he'd bought for £40. He launched it on a Tuesday morning. By Friday, he had sold 0 copies. By the following Tuesday, he had sold 0 copies. He sat at his desk on the Wednesday evening, day 9 of the 7th failure, and wrote one sentence in his notebook: "I don't know what I'm doing wrong." And that sentence, that admission, was the beginning of everything. Now, I want to pause here, because what happened to Daniel next wasn't a lucky break. It wasn't the right investor or the right timing or the right market conditions. It was something that happened at 4:58 in the morning. Something so counterintuitive that when I tell you what it was, your first instinct will be to dismiss it. Don't. because the difference between Daniel's seventh failure and everything that came after it was not talent. It was a code. And it started before sunrise. On day 11 of the seventh failure, Daniel couldn't sleep. It was 4:37 in the morning. He'd been lying in bed for 2 hours, mind running through the same exhausted loop. What had gone wrong, what he'd missed, why he couldn't make anything work. He got up, made tea, sat at his desk in the dark, and on impulse pulled out a book he'd bought 3 years earlier and never opened. A thin thing, 94 pages, written by a retired Japanese engineer named Kenji Mori, who had spent 40 years studying the patterns of people who succeeded after repeated failure. Daniel had bought it because the title caught him. He'd never read it because life kept getting in the way. He read it that night in one sitting. Most of the book he would later describe as interesting but not revelatory. Systems thinking, pattern recognition, the usual architecture of self-improvement literature. But on page 61, Mori wrote something that stopped Daniel completely. He wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, that the reason most people who fail repeatedly never break the cycle is not lack of effort or talent or even luck. It is that they begin every day already defeated. They wake up carrying the weight of what didn't work. They open their phones before they've opened their minds. They receive the world's agenda before they've had a chance to set their own. And so every new attempt begins not from a clean slate, but from a deficit, a psychological debt accumulated from every previous failure that has never been properly processed. Mori called it starting from behind the line. And Daniel, reading this at 4:17 in the morning in a dark flat with 43 pounds in his bank account, felt something shift. Because he recognized it instantly. Every single morning for as long as he could remember, he had woken up already behind the line, already anxious, already cataloging what wasn't working, already in reaction mode before the day had technically begun. He read on. Mori's solution was not elaborate, it was almost embarrassingly simple. He called it the 5 a.m. code. Not a schedule, not a routine, a code as in a set of principles, a sequence, a key that unlocks something specific in the human mind during a specific window of time. The premise was this: between 4:55 and 5:15 in the morning, before the first notification, before the first obligation, before the first word spoken to another human being, there is a window of mental clarity that the modern world has systematically trained us to waste. In that window, the brain is uniquely receptive. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of identity, values, and intentional decision-making, is operating without the noise of social comparison, digital distraction, or accumulated daily stress. It is, Mori wrote, the only time in a grown adult's day that they can hear themselves think without interference. And most people, he noted, spend that window checking Instagram. Daniel set his alarm at 4:58. He didn't believe it would work. He had tried morning routines before. Cold showers, journaling, meditation apps, all of them had lasted between 4 days and 2 weeks. But something about Mori's framing was different. This wasn't about discipline. It wasn't about becoming a morning person. It was about reclaiming the one window the world hadn't yet reached. When the alarm went off at 4:58 the following morning, Daniel got up. And what he did in the next 20 minutes changed the next 7 years of his life. Here is the 5 a.m. code. Not a summary, not a paraphrase, exactly what Daniel did, exactly what Mori described, exactly what separated the 7th failure from everything that followed. I'm going to give you all 4 steps. Take note of step 3, because step 3 is the one nobody talks about, and it's the one that makes the other 3 work. Step 1. The silent arrival. Daniel sat up in bed, feet on the floor, eyes open. No phone, no light yet, no sound. He sat in the darkness for 60 seconds and did nothing. Not meditation, not breathing exercises, not visualization. Just sat there and arrived. Mori explained this in the book as the neural transition, the 60 seconds it takes for the prefrontal cortex to fully engage after sleep. Most people short-circuit this transition the moment they reach for their phone. The blue light, the stimulation, the immediate social input, all of it hijacks the brain before it's finished waking up. The silent arrival was simply, let the brain finish waking up before you hand it to someone else. 60 seconds, that's all. Step 2. The failure audit. This is where Daniel's practice diverged from every morning routine he'd tried before. Instead of writing what he was grateful for, or setting intentions for the day, or visualizing success, he did something that felt almost backwards. He reviewed the previous day's failure. One specific thing that hadn't worked, one decision that had been weak, one moment where he'd been less than he intended to be. And he wrote one sentence about it, not a paragraph, not a journal entry, one sentence. Then he closed the notebook. Mori's reasoning was precise. Unprocessed failure doesn't disappear, it accumulates. It becomes the psychological debt that makes every new morning feel like a deficit. The failure audit was not self-criticism, it was closure, a deliberate signal to the brain that yesterday's failure had been acknowledged, logged, and filed. Not ignored, not catastrophized, filed. Done, complete, yesterday's. Daniel told me later that this single step, more than any other, was what broke the cycle. Because for the first time in 7 years of failing, he stopped carrying yesterday into today. Step 3. The identity declaration. This is the step nobody talks about, and it is the engine of the entire code. After the failure audit, Daniel would write, by hand in the same notebook, a single sentence beginning with the words, "Today I am." Not "today I will do," not "today I want to," "Today I am." The distinction is not semantic, it is neurological. Research in behavioral psychology consistently shows that identity-based framing, statements about who you are rather than what you intend to do, produces dramatically different behavioral outcomes. When a person declares, "I am someone who finishes what they start," their brain begins unconsciously filtering decisions through that identity. When they declare, "I will try to finish what I start," the brain treats it as an aspiration, optional, negotiable, easily abandoned when friction appears. Daniel's declaration changed every few days as his understanding of himself shifted. Some mornings it was, "Today I am someone who ships imperfect work rather than polishing perfect nothing." Some mornings it was, "Today I am someone who makes one sale before checking one email." Some mornings, in the hard weeks, it was simply, "Today I am someone who does not quit." But every morning it was present, written by hand, read aloud once, then placed face down on the desk. Step 4. The one locked door. Before Daniel touched his phone, before he opened his laptop, before he made his coffee, he identified one task, one specific, completable task that was directly connected to revenue in his business. Not a to-do list, not a priority matrix, one locked door. The rule was simple. The locked door opened first, before email, before social media, before anything reactive. Some days, the locked door was writing one email to a potential partner. Some days, it was recording one video lesson for his course. Some days, it was researching one specific gap in his product. But every day, the locked door was identified at 5:03 a.m., and every day it was opened before the world came online. The total time for all 4 steps, 19 minutes. Daniel was done with the 5 a.m. code by 5:17 every morning. Then he made his coffee. Then he began. In the first week of the 5 a.m. code, nothing changed. Daniel's course still had 0 sales. But something quieter shifted. He noticed on day 4 that he was sitting down to work at 8 a.m. with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. Not energy exactly, clarity, a sense of knowing what he was doing and why before the day had a chance to confuse him. He attributed it to the sleep, or the quiet, or just coincidence. He kept going anyway. In week 2, he made his first sale, 47 pounds. A teacher in Manchester named Claire, who had found his course through a forum post he'd written the previous week during the one locked-door session he dedicated to community outreach. He stared at the notification for a long time, not because 47 pounds was significant money, because it was proof. Not proof that the business would work, not proof that the 5 a.m. code was magic, proof that the locked door, opened first, produced something the scattered 8-hour workday never had. He had spent 7 years working hard. He had never, before that Tuesday morning, worked specifically. Week 3 brought a setback. He rewrote the entire first module of the course based on feedback from Claire and 2 other early buyers. It took him 4 days and felt like dismantling something he'd been building for months. On day 3 of the rewrite, at 5:11 a.m., he wrote his identity declaration. "Today, I am someone who builds the right thing, not the finished thing." He wrote it, read it aloud, put it face down, and went back to the rewrite. By the end of month 1, he had 11 students, revenue 462 pounds. Not life-changing, but it was the first month in 7 years that a business of Daniel's had earned money in every single week. Month 2, something accelerated. The failure audit had a compounding effect he hadn't expected. By reviewing one small failure every morning and consciously filing it as complete, he had stopped accumulating the psychological weight that had crushed every previous attempt. He was lighter, not happier necessarily. The work was still hard and the doubt was still present, but he was lighter. He made decisions faster. He shipped things he would previously have kept refining. He sent emails he would previously have agonized over for days. He posted content he would previously have deleted before anyone saw it. The identity declaration had done something to his relationship with imperfection. He was no longer someone trying to succeed. He was someone who was succeeding, slowly, imperfectly, incompletely, but actively. Present tense, identity. By the end of month 3, the course had 48 students. By month 6, 217. By the end of the first year, Daniel's course had generated over 60,000 pounds in revenue. He had launched a second course. He had 2 part-time staff. He had a wait list. And every single morning at 5:48, his alarm went off. And every single morning he got up. Not because he was a morning person, because the morning was the only time the world wasn't louder than him. I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it not in the comments, not out loud, just honestly to yourself. How many times have you failed at something that mattered? Not failed lazily, failed genuinely. Put real effort, real hope, real time into something and watched it not work. Because here's what Daniel's story is actually about. It isn't about morning routines. It isn't even about business. It's about what you do with the weight of all the times you tried and it didn't work. Because that weight is the thing. That weight is everything. The 5 a.m. code didn't make Daniel successful. What it did was far more important. It stopped him starting every day from behind the line. It gave him a 19-minute window before the world's noise, before the day's demands, before the accumulated weight of every previous failure, where he could hear himself clearly, where he could process yesterday without being destroyed by it, where he could declare who he was before anyone else got the chance to tell him, where he could identify the one door that mattered and decide in the quiet before the chaos to open it first. The 5 a.m. code is not a morning routine. It is a daily act of refusing to let your past failures become your present identity. Daniel failed 7 times, but he only failed 7 times because the 8th attempt, the modest one, the humble one, the one built in a spare bedroom with a second-hand laptop and no investors and no partners and nothing except 19 minutes every morning before the world woke up, that one worked. Not because the idea was better, not because the timing was better, because Daniel was different. He had learned to start each day from the front of the line. And so can you. The 5 a.m. code costs 19 minutes, 4 steps, 1 locked door, and the willingness to get up before the world gets loud. That's it. That's the whole thing. So here's your challenge, and it's smaller than you think. Tomorrow morning, just once, set your alarm for 5 minutes earlier than usual. When it goes off, sit up, feet on the floor. Don't touch your phone. 60 seconds of silence. Just arrive. Then take out any notebook or the back of an envelope or the Notes app if you must, and write one sentence. Write the one thing from yesterday that didn't work. One sentence. Then close it. Then write, "Today I am," and finish that sentence honestly. Not who you want to be eventually, who you are choosing to be today. Then identify one locked door, one thing connected to what actually matters to you that you will open before you do anything else. That's the 5 a.m. code. 19 minutes, 4 steps, 1 locked door, and the willingness to get up before the world gets loud. That's it. That's the whole thing. So here's your challenge, and it's smaller than you think. Tomorrow morning, just once, set your alarm for 5 minutes earlier than usual. When it goes off, sit up, feet on the floor. Don't touch your phone. 60 seconds of silence. Just arrive. Then take out any notebook or the back of an envelope or the Notes app if you must, and write one sentence. Write the one thing from yesterday that didn't work. One sentence. Then close it. Then write, "Today I am," and finish that sentence honestly. Not who you want to be eventually, who you are choosing to be today. Then identify one locked door, one thing connected to what actually matters to you that you will open before you do anything else. That's the 5 a.m. code. 19 minutes, 4 steps, 1 locked door, and the willingness to get up before the world gets loud. That's it. That's the whole thing. So here's your challenge, and it's smaller than you think. Tomorrow morning, just once, set your alarm for 5 minutes earlier than usual. When it goes off, sit up, feet on the floor. Don't touch your phone. 60 seconds of silence. Just arrive. Then take out any notebook or the back of an envelope or the Notes app if you must, and write one sentence. Write the one thing from yesterday that didn't work. One sentence. Then close it. Then write, "Today I am," and finish that sentence honestly. Not who you want to be eventually, who you are choosing to be today. Then identify one locked door, one thing connected to what actually matters to you that you will open before you do anything else. That's the 5 a.m. code. 19 minutes. If you're starting tomorrow, drop attempt 1 in the comments. Not day 1, attempt 1. Because Daniel was on attempt 8 when everything changed. And whatever number you're on right now, that number is not your limit, it's your data. If Daniel's story moved something in you, there's a story right here that I think you need next. A man who woke up miserable for years until 5 minutes at 5 a.m. changed his entire life. I'll see you there.